Welcome to the Black on Black Education Podcast, where we interview the most brilliant minds
and connected hearts to discuss our shared passion for the transformation,
the revolution,
reimagining,
and recreation
of education in the Black community.
My name is Eva Loren Jean Charles, founder of Black on Black Education and New York City high school teacher.
And I'm Jamal Thomas, her partner and dad, education enthusiast.
And we're your hosts. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.
And most importantly, to enjoy the episode. Alrighty, another episode of the Black on Black Education Podcast. As always, we asked our guests, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it?
Well, hello. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for your time and inviting me to your fantastic show today. Well, I'm Kimberly Lane Clarke. I am currently a Google for Education program manager for school organizations in the Southeast United States. And so people are like, okay, where is that? Kind of the Southeast, South part, but on the East. And I support and serve as a Google for Education trusted advisor, tech evangelist, point of contact for schools in the Carolinas, West Virginia, and Virginia.
Okay, awesome. Let's get right into it. This is not the first, nor the last, nor the 150th time that people have heard about STEM, right? In the last couple of years, I know that for me, there's been an extraordinary increase in conversations about STEM, and particularly getting Black and Brown children into and getting them excited about work and careers in STEM. So just blanket, everyone's talking about this. Why?
Yes. Wow. You said a handful there, and everyone is talking about a STEM. I'm excited that everyone is talking about STEM, to be honest. I get so happy when I see, an initiative or anything at schools where we support Google for Education, honestly. But prior to my role, thinking about STEM and what is STEM, we hear science, technology, engineering, math. Sometimes people put a little stream into it with reading. Sometimes people put STEAM into it with the arts. And I honestly think that STEM is just an incorporation of all of those. So, kind of the reason why I think STEM is so important is that, it kind of provides a window into the present and the future workforce. And so how we operate on a day-to-day life, it kind of gives us a real world problem solving and actions that students can experience as well.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. We just got back from Chicago, where we worked at a youth conference put on by American Family Insurance, and it was the STEAM and Dream Youth Summit. And we did Atlanta, Milwaukee, now Chicago, and so they put that A in there for the arts. But what I'm most taken by, and connects to what you just said, is you talked about it being a window, and we look at it the exact same way. It is a window into possibilities. Like, what are the possibilities for young people that they don't currently know and exist today? So being able to expose people to ideas that open their mind to the potential of what they can be is kind of an incredible thing, and it's such an important part of the education space. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Let's get some specifics. When young people focus in on STEM, STEAM, I actually never heard the STREAM one before, but all of the above. What are some of the professions that become possible for students? How much money can they make? Make it really palatable and interesting for the young people and for teachers to want to get more involved in teaching it.
Yeah, I actually want to take you back because I remember in my previous role in my school district, when we first started there, and it was, wow, actually like 6 years ago, actually thinking about it. And I can't even believe I was just writing a newsletter, not even really realizing that it's 2022. And so, that's just the craziest thing to me. And I know people are like, but I just remember talking about in the year 2020, they're going to be flying cars and they're going to be smart devices and all of these pieces. And now I get to 2022, I'm like, okay, I still don't see the smart cars. But anywho, I served as a director of blended learning, and so the latter part of my career. But before that, I was on the STEM design team as a blended learning specialist. And so we were one of the first T STEM school districts in the entire state of Texas. And so, what we wanted to do there, we wanted to ensure students and experience STEM and were being able to be prepared for college and career readiness. And so, we wanted this to be embodied. And I know you asked a question about, the jobs and how much they get paid, but what in our schools, in my previous role in our schools, we wanted it to be named basically after a STEM pipeline. So all the students kind of had an experience. So for instance, information systems and software design, global arts and communication, health and science and technology. And so there's just to name a few of them. And so like the disciplines, the kids got to actually see
Mhm.
what those jobs meant in that. So it was like a pipeline. So once they got through those elementary schools, when they got to the middle school where everybody went, they kind of went through a pathway with all of those actually pipelines that they might have had a little dibble and dabble in the global arts and communication where everybody learned about piano or ballet or the health science. Nurses came and talked to them about that. And so the entire piece was that they would kind of understand, not necessarily is to pick a path, but to gain an understanding. And so that kind of goes back to your question in regards to the jobs. You know, I honestly, before even the 6 years I was at that particular district and understanding kind of those jobs, I didn't even realize the things that were out there.
Mhm.
For instance, agriculture, and in things of where computer science goes into this, where the farmers are actually using algorithms to
Mm.
see how their crops are going to be, or a data scientist or a product manager, thinking about those pieces and getting into those, or AI, and we hear AI and we hear machine learning, but there's someone behind that. And so
Mhm.
for students to be able to see that, we always hear about software engineers. We've heard about this forever, but there's so many other pieces that go into getting into STEM, getting into CS, and a couple of things I named, the agriculture scientists. Obviously that goes with science. There goes a little engineering in there, a lot of math in there as well. So it's important for kids to see those pathways. And like I said, it not pick what they want, but see the potential. And then there are so many other avenues that you can go to in order to major in those.
No, I love what you're saying there because I think that it's important for students to recognize that it's not just how much money you can make or what it is that I'm trying to pull my full thoughts together,
Oh
but
yeah.
like it's it's not just how much money you can make or what the job title is, and I think for so long,
Mhm.
education has really pushed students to fight for those things, and we know
Mhm.
that, like, there are extremely lucrative positions that are in the STEM field, whether it be engineering, whether it be electrical engineering, whether it be, teaching on a large scale or being a mathematician for various different research studies. There are so many ways for you to be able to leverage, all of the things that come under, STEM and STEAM, but what you're digging into is them recognizing and understanding what those jobs and what they add and how they add value to to society as a whole, and how we can not
Yeah.
think about robots and mechanics as things that are replacing us, but also as other new opportunities for us to make our lives easier and create opportunities, for us to have more enjoyable lives. Like AI, when I think about the version of AI that would make me happy and not scared, it's when things in my life become easier that I no longer have to deal with it, that become automated because someone has coded and done the thing that I don't know how to do to make my
Yeah.
life easier. So I just love how you're digging into that a little bit. And so I know for you, you have a specific focus, in computer science. And for me, if I had to gun to my head define computer science, I'm not sure that I'd be able to answer it correctly. So break it down. Like, what is computer science? What are the different jobs that are available to young people when they have a major in in computer science? And yeah, just dig into that whole arena, and why it's something that's being pushed, as something for young people to begin thinking about.
Yeah, I think back into what you just said about AI, and I recently just saw where there is a rapper that's been created through artificial intelligence, and so that was so
Literally
cool. And
saw
so if kids can see that potential, and to answer your question, what is computer science? It's just the art of teaching a computer what to do. And so that was coined by Adriel Frederick. And so hopefully I'm saying his name correctly because I've been using his definition for quite some time. But it's just the art of teaching a computer what to do. And when you think about algorithms, it's just a list of steps. And so when we think about programs and algorithms, that's just a piece of it. I'm just telling because computers, to be frank, are dumb. Computers don't know unless you're teaching them, unless you're behind them.
Mm,
So to be able to, the person that created this AI rapper, and we can get into a lot of pieces on there, but there's the back end of it for kids to meet kids where they are. And so when I first heard this definition, I was like, oh my God, yes, yes, that's it. You know, I was really embarking on a journey to begin teaching teachers about, CS. And this was about 7, 8 years ago. And so, now I look at recently, I saw the most searched trend was Python help. And so this is in 2022. And so how do I code in Python? Basic programs. And so that's something to me is fascinating because people are really getting into what is computer science. And we always hear algorithms. We always hear on Facebook, it's the algorithm. I'm speaking and someone hears me, it's the algorithm. But
mm.
I, always when I was in, my district, and even now if I'm mentoring someone, you know, what is actually behind that? What it is just the art of teaching a computer what to do. That's what it is.
Wow.
Yeah, and so this when people talk about all of these technologies, a lot of adults don't understand this stuff. So
Yeah.
that brings some challenge to kind of what goes on in school. So on one hand, we do
Yeah.
want to frame these things for young people, but because so much instruction comes through the adults, what kind of work
Hmm.
do you do to make sure that the adults are kind of have fertile ground and understanding the significant importance of preparing students for this for future that is absolutely positively sure to come.
Yeah. Prior to me coming to Google, I did a lot of I did a lot of professional development, excuse me, professional development. And I worked kind of part time with code.org. I did a lot of kind of strategizing on how to bring computer science into the classrooms. And so, kind of to bring it back and answer your question, a lot of times the PDs were just learning how to teach the fundamentals, learning how to teach how do I integrate an algorithm into my everyday classroom, for instance, math. And so it's just the instruction. Think about your directions that you write on your paper, or you write on when you're in Google Classroom or your LMS, and those are just a list of steps. So I think teachers just have to get into bringing in that vocabulary, and so being able to do that, the professional developments that are out there really taught them just the fundamentals, just the basics of what computer science is. How do I bring this into the classroom? And then focusing on the resources that they can bring into the classroom and the opportunities as well.
Yeah, I love it. And so it's just making me think about how did this become exciting for you, right? I think that that's something that I struggle with as an educator because
Yeah.
math and science were not my strong suits. Yes, I've always kind of had a piece of technology, whether it be computer or phone, in my lifetime. Still, probably not the most savvy person in the world. And engineering, again, would I be able to fully define what an engineer does? Probably not. And so I just want to know, like, how did it show up for you in your life? How did this become something that's felt accessible in terms of you wanting to connect with STEM, and then particularly as yourself as an underrepresented person in the
Mhm.
STEM field, like what empowered you to be able to say, no, this is work that I can do, and I can empower other people who look like me to do that work as well.
I've always wanted to be an educator since I can remember. I mean, that's something that hadn't changed, evolved, even with some of the work that I do now and at Google as well. But still, the one thing that was about technology, really kind of learning about the pagers and the computers at an early age, really set me up for success. And so in school, they called me like the techno girl. And so I kind of coined that name, and it was a techno girl. And then some of my students, when I was teaching way back when, called me the Ask a Techno Girl. And so I thank them for that,
Mm,
because I knew how to fix a lot of the technology and teach the teachers about tech.
mm,
One thing that really got me excited is I credit my mother, honestly, for providing me the opportunity. I always, and you'll hear me say the opportunity a lot, is because when I first began teaching, and even before when I was in college, I had a professor that was like, Kim, I really think that you might should. Yeah, I don't know if technology is going to take off like it's supposed to, and you probably should major in social studies, just to give you kind of a piece that where you can begin teaching. And I was like, no, I want to teach teachers about technology. And at that time, there was not even a certification that
mm,
actually where I could even begin doing that in STEM. But when I first began teaching, I was offered a STEM certification course. And so I fell in love with the additional disciplines of STEM, with the STEM, with the possibilities being endless. I got to kind of go through the pathways that I'm referring to that the students went through when I was previously in my district. And so I became excited because students are able to explore, they can become creative, they can develop the skills that they needed. So I was already embedded, technology was embedded, but the science piece, the engineering piece, and the math piece, kind of all encompassed where I saw that it was needed to bring about kind of STEM what we know it is today. So, kind of an all of encompass, but I think my biggest takeaway is the opportunity that my mom presented for me.
And like my dad presented opportunity for me. I did not necessarily pick it
Mhm.
up, and
Mm,
there were not, in school, I didn't see how it all kind of came together. So my father worked at Prodigy,
mhm.
one of the first search engines. So I had like the internet, like early
Wow.
chat rooms and all of this stuff. I was on the internet, like, arguing with people in Russia and all kind of craziness. Like, and so it's just like, but I didn't recognize the power at the time of what this thing was ultimately going to be. And my dad tried to get me into coding and things to that effect, and all of the numbers and all that. I was like, no. But it was, I saw coding as all of those numbers. I didn't see it as
Mhm,
creating.
mm,
And so, like,
mhm,
coding is actually creating. And I feel like if at the time somebody had made that link for me, I might have
mhm.
said, you know what, this is something that I want to do, because I have all of these things that I want to create nowadays. But I got to go to somebody else to do it, and I don't even know whether they're doing it right, whether they're doing it wrong. Like, you know what I mean? It's I'm lost in it. I can explain to
Yeah.
them what I want to see and what I want to do, but I don't know if they're doing it correctly. And so the work that you're doing is so important, because you get to show people, you see this thing that is out here in the world today. Somebody had
Mhm,
to code that. Like, it started somewhere. It started with those numbers. And I
yeah,
think what happens is, I know what happens with some students is when they can understand, oh, that's how you create that. It gives them the energy,
yeah.
motivation to do the work leading up to that process. So big shout to dad. You did a very, very good job. You put it in my head, and so that creativity is never gonna go away. School, you guys should have helped me understand, like, how to link it all together.
Yeah, and I think, that sometimes where you kind of go back to the question you asked me previously is how teachers, can get involved in bringing that opportunity to classrooms. And so I think, PD and being also just curious as to how I can bring these resources, because I always I've told teachers prior when I was in my district, and even now at Google, is that you just have to be curious and bring them the resources. You don't technically have to know coding ins and outs, but you just have to bring those resources. And one thing, before I came to Google, I was afforded the opportunity as an educator to become a Google for Education certified trainer. and an innovator. And so this innovator project was my project. And so basically, let me tell you about the innovator project. It's basically they invite educators, and if you're curious about a project, something that you want to do to solve a challenge in education, they bring you the kind of the resources. They bring you together to kind of basically do design sprints and think about like what can you do to solve this problem. And so my project was to bring more girls opportunities to crash the digital divide in CS and STEM fields. But the key is to bring more opportunities, because we always hear about there's a lack of minorities, there's a lack of black and brown girls, there's a lack of women involved in CS and STEM fields. But I think the key that we misses the opportunity like we're talking about right now. And so fast forward to me getting kind of my dream job now at Google. I just had to plug that in there because I absolutely love it. I've been able to live out my passion, not
Mm,
only in my core role, but also doing 20% projects. So we have this thing called 20% projects, and I get to work with the CS Ed team. And so when we think about it, it's where you get to build out your passions. You think about Gmail. Gmail was created from just a small project.
yeah,
So I'm able to be able to assist, and we brought in Googlers into a virtual classroom from underrepresented areas in the United States, and Googlers were able to speak about their computer science pathways. That's the opportunity. And
yeah,
so the teachers are there. They can pick up on this, especially when kids become curious about it. They can pick up on this, get the resources to bring additional opportunities for people to see it. It's so essential, like I say, for students to see someone that looks like them. If I
yeah.
don't see it, I can't dream it. I can't do anything
Mm.
about that.
No, I appreciate that so much. And because like I'm in the classroom full time, I'm around young people all the time.
Yeah.
I'm working with them, and I see that so many of them have passions in this
Yes.
area. They are excited about, oh wait, this new thing does this, and how does it do that? I don't know, but let's figure it out. Right? Thinking
Hmm.
about all the different things that they can kind of make this stuff transferable to, what they can use and how they can use technology and the various different communication tools that we have available to us for
Yes.
such a plethora of things. It's again understanding that technology, the definition of it, right, is making things easier for yourself, creating
Mm-hmm.
that make things easier. And so students, you're struggling with this. What is a technology that you can use that will help make that thing easier? And so I think that's something that we've seen over the course of the time, because we did go through this thing called the COVID-19 pandemic that sent families and students and teachers home for a substantive period of time, and where virtual learning went from almost obsolete in a lot of schools to being
Hmm.
main source of students receiving any education. Talk a little bit about the impact of the change to virtual learning and how schools have needed to pivot and change, even in coming back to being in person, around using technology in the classroom to advance the learning that's already happening.
Yeah, I just have to laugh about that because we've heard many times about the impact of virtual learning, especially since students around the country were learning virtually full time. And
Yeah.
so, which was totally unprecedented. You asked me, I was a director of blended learning at that time. I was excited at first because people are using technology, teachers are using technology, but then, I mean, I had to become back down to reality. And so, one thing that I think of in virtual learning that really, kept students learning is Google Classroom.
Yeah.
It kept students throughout kind of the worst part of the pandemic. And so, that's what's important because we hear, certain things in terms of how learning loss or virtual learning and all those aspects of that. But as a previous director, I personally viewed it as a catalyst, that got teachers eager to learn about technology, even those who were not incorporating in technology into the classroom at the previously found a way.
Yeah.
And so teachers everywhere kind of stepped up to meet the moment at a really difficult time to keep students learning, and they're really the heroes you're the hero, you're in the classroom right now. And so, my district, my previous district, and a lot more, Google Classrooms, was their tool.
Yeah.
And so, what we've also have known is that the learning styles are so different, which is what makes up students.
Yep.
Their learning styles should be different, and it's individualized, and so it's never can be, a one size fit all. Some students and families really struggle, without face to face learning too, to
Yeah.
supplement virtual learning. So we have to put that in, to aspect as well. And so, but tools like, Google Meet, the translate feature that came out kind of afterwards, really kind of helped and brought in that inclusive learning environment that I think is so important because our students learn differently, but such as a hybrid model, and for students who can't be in the classroom. So I think all of that kind of encompass that we sometimes don't think about are virtual learning pieces as well.
Yeah, I definitely connect with anytime people talk about how students learn different, because I've said on this
Hmm.
podcast a bunch of times, I learned different, and
Hmm.
that school in and of itself, the way that it worked was not the best way of learning for me. At the beginning of the pandemic, we talked a lot about kind of shame on us if we go back and everything is exactly the way that it is when we left. And certainly it's not exactly that way. And certainly, many teachers and educators, administration have done a good job of kind of
Oh yeah,
advancing. But I think that the status quo just is hard to to
yeah,
really pull away
yeah.
from. And so when I think about STEM, and we go to that E and we go to engineering, you know,
Hmm.
people think engineering is just the building of a building or something,
Hmm.
but engineering is also design. It's engineering systems. So I wonder how much you've given thought, how much Google is talking about this, around how we engineer a system to fit more of those students that traditional schooling just does not work for. Where some people did fantastic with hybrid learning. So engineering a system where they are allowed to be in and out. Maybe they're homeschooled
Yeah.
a little bit, but they still have access to the resources of schools. Maybe engineering something where all of the learning does not have to be done with the people in your building or in your classroom. Things start to be expansive, where maybe you're learning with all the people who are tend towards wanting to learn the same thing that you want to. And we design a process by where you can work with this other school, or you can work with this other group of students in another country. Like, are those some of the things from an engineering perspective that you and or Google are thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. In Google for Education, I like I said, I loved it before I was even at Google. It was a dream job because of the fact that they really listen to the educators. Any types of focus groups, or those pieces that happen, they really listen to the educator. And thinking about those pieces that you just named in engineering to make sure that all students in an inclusive learning environment. One that was recently released is called a Screencast app. And so it's something that you can record and share lessons, demos with a transcript. And so that's where the piece comes into play, where we're putting in an inclusive learning environment is a transcript.
Mhm.
Once the teachers create their video, and so just think about if they're, doing their lesson while they're actually, in the power zone. And I always say the power zone, and you're in the classroom, you're in your mode, and so you're doing your lesson and you're recording that lesson using the Screencast app. And so then when the students get home, they can use the transcript. And if they're working with their parent, possibly, we have a parent that has English as a second language, and they can use the transcript and actually translate
Mm.
that actual piece of the actual lesson, which I
Wow.
feel that's amazing because even with my nephew, I look at some of the math that he's dealing with right there. He's in the fourth grade. I'm like, okay, I maybe I missed this in fourth grade, but I'm not sure what's happening right now. And so if a teacher is actually recorded that lesson, I can look at the transcript. I can actually go in and search for a piece that I know that the teacher has said, and the student can do this as well. But let's flip the script. What if the student wanted to explain how they solved their problem? They can use a screencast app as well. So that's something that has been engineered recently. Another one is practice sets. It's where educators can easily transform their teaching content into interactive assignments. And so it's
Mm,
using Google Classroom, but you have that auto grading tool. You also have where students can get extra support. So the AI feature comes, well, the adaptive learning feature comes into play that encompasses AI and machine learning, that basically kind of gives them insights or hints if they get the answer wrong. And so that helps if you're thinking about a differentiated learning environment. Students might be on practice sets, and then the teacher might be working with a small group. And so, and if I get the answer wrong, I can get a quick hint or an insight that actually gives me, saying, oh, you got this answer wrong, but let me show you, maybe why. And so that's something that, Google for Education is really thought about. And there's so many of them. We're thinking about just the tools we use like Google Docs and being able to present a Google Meet within Google Docs,
yeah.
and some of our smart Canvas pieces that's a feature now that has been created where you can basically embed. I don't know if y'all remember WebQuest or HyperDocs. They're WebQuest, and so some people that are here this will laugh because you've heard it before.
Hyperdocs.
HyperDocs, you've heard of HyperDocs, and so
Mhm.
when I was teaching, WebQuest was there, and so it's basically just embedding these links on on a document, and so you will be able to click on those links just on one document. But Smart Canvas has taken this to a different level. To me, it's really profound what they thought about because you can actually
So
you can
You like
actually
you like smart
embed.
canvas. You like smart canvas.
You can actually embed those smart chips, a doc from another time that you actually met. Students can meet with each other. They can embed a slide deck, and it's all on this one doc. So I really like Smart Canvas. It's a great feature. So those are some of the things that have been engineered to be able to create this inclusive environment, to be able to meet students where they are, which is extremely important.
no, I love that. And I think that like the meeting students where they are, we keep coming back to that because I think that
Hmm.
sometimes teachers think about technology as something that is an additional thing that they have to learn or additional thing
Oh
that they
yeah.
have to think about or additional thing that they have to plan for instead of something that can actually support some of the things that we're already supposed to be doing, like differentiating for students, working with ENL, depending on what your English language learners, working with students that have different or specific needs. Like, okay, if you're a
Yes.
student that suffers with ADHD and it's hard for you to pay attention for a whole class period, well, if
Yes.
I'm recording the entire class and you missed 10, 15 minutes of the lesson because you needed to take a break, that information is still accessible to you. But when you're not using
Mhm.
technology, it becomes a burden on the educator to be able to try to be all these things for everyone instead of using and leveraging technology to do something that again makes your life easier. So I think that we're getting into the place where people have learned all of these different tools that Google has to offer. They have learned all of
Mhm.
these different mindset shifts from you to think about the way that they embed STEM and STEAM into their classrooms. And so now it's getting into thinking about um, how and in what ways educators can find the resources that then allow for their students to say, okay, here, you might be interested in this. Here's this thing, or here, let me introduce to you the different
Yeah.
careers that exist within STEM. Where do folks find that interest if parents or students or teachers are listening to this and are like, I don't even know where to start to support my kids in being able to get involved? How might you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and so I always get this question a lot, and so I'm excited about that because they if I'm doing a presentation or whatever, they're like, okay, so how do I get started, Kim? But first and foremost, be an advocate for your student. When we think about those opportunities, being interested in seeing our kids are, interested in these things, be an advocate. But then don't be afraid to take classes yourself, as well as learning more about STEM and CS. And then gaming. Gaming is such a great avenue for STEM, believe it or not. But there are
Mm,
so many
wow.
CS focus areas that involve game design and the back end of it, and computer science and STEM. There's so many pieces involved in it. And so in my community, we have a gaming center where students learn about gaming careers. So seeing if that's a piece, and if it's not anyone that's in your community, there might be a virtual space that your students or children can actually attend. But also, you can purchase STEM kits. Amazon has some really great STEM kits, to just kind of from beginners to advanced. You can also reach out to your local universities, and see what STEM camps are being offered. And so, oftentimes, many community centers offer STEM camps and after school programs. For instance, my nephew attended a STEM camp this summer. And so I was so excited. I was like, oh, you get to attend a STEM camp. He was like, at TT, I already know about how to hook up a computer. I already know about this, and I'm like, okay, but you're still gonna go because you're still gonna learn. But he's just all into it. And so, and my last piece is, if there is not one, start one.
Mm,
Research it and start it. And all you need is the willingness to begin. And I feel like the resources will come forth, and they will be able to be able to help you, and you can look out and reach out to some of those local people as well. But start it.
And
absolutely.
I'm hearing mindset shifts, and
Yes.
like almost learning and unlearning how we do things, both at the educator and the student level. And that is what is going to lead when people have this openness, because sometimes all it takes is one little thing, like that glimmer.
Yes.
So we often talk about the word education and how it means to bring out. And if nobody ever taps into that glimmer in the student, nobody
Hmm.
ever, what I mean, ignites the fire and waves the flame, then it doesn't burn. And then when somebody brings them something that's not necessarily productive, where there's a glimmer there, where there's a part of it that's
Yeah.
attractive. Oh, girls are gonna like me more because I'm part of this group or something like that.
Mm,
And this is how we lose kids. And so it's imperative for us to think along those lines. One thing that was floating around in my head that as you talked, I don't know if are you familiar with Black Mirror?
No, I haven't. I'm not.
It's a show on Netflix where
Oh.
they take all of the various different things that are technology, and things that are going to be in the future, AI, and then they go and they show like the downsides of those
Mm,
things. It's really super interesting show.
right.
Technology can be fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Like you see
It's
the
almost like Rambo.
is it Boston Dynamics, like the robot dogs, when you start putting guns on them and they start chasing people and things like that. This is
hmm.
technology being used, on the dark side. So I wonder, what, if any, dark side have you kind of thought about, either of too much technology in the classroom, or being relied on too much,
Mm.
and taking students in a place that might not be the healthiest. Is that something you've ever considered?
I have considered it in the form of digital citizenship. I think
Mm,
that is extremely important. And so, digital citizenship, not, I remember listening to a keynote. I think it was a CEO of ISTE. And so he was talking about digital citizenship, and not teaching students not what to do. Like, no, this is wrong. Don't do this, but teaching them how to use technology and when and where to use technology. And so, going back to what you're saying, I think can be a dark side to anything, but if we teach our students, becoming because they were born into technology, so we have, but however, they don't know how to use it. So that's our job, is to teach them about the digital citizenship piece. And so one thing that previously in my district, and what I do also is an advocate. I'm a huge advocate for digital citizenship. And so we have something called Be Internet Awesome at Google. And so Be Internet Awesome is they have like this thing called Interland. And so it takes them through like this world of gaming and talks about like kind of the not the do's and don'ts, but just how to operate in a technology environment. And so then
Mhm.
the cool thing is that they have the lesson plans for the teachers. And so the lesson plans are already built out in Google Slides. And so there's also an engagement piece with Pear Deck that you can easily embed a 7-minute piece into your day to talk about digital citizenship. And so, we always, kind of get into, don't do this. And I know I keep on saying that, but we have to teach them how and why and what's important and the correct use of technology.
I mean, yeah, all educators that are in this space, I mean, provide rationale is like the number one thing that we're taught when we are developing
Yeah.
lessons and developing curriculum for students. Having students be able to understand why what we're teaching them is important, having them understand
Hmm.
why this is something that we have to talk about in this space. And so, if we're going to bring STEM into the classroom, we're going to bring technology specifically into the classroom and allowing students to engage with that material. We have to also provide them with an understanding of how to actually engage with that, because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
so much to learn about how to keep yourself safe, how to be safe to others, how to treat people
Yes.
well. Because we know, again, everything has a bad side. And so we have to just prepare our
Yes.
students for those things. And
Yes.
so, I mean, we're rounding out in this conversation. Again, every time we have this podcast, I'm like, how did we get to 40 minutes already? But I think that the work that you're doing is so, so imperative. And I think that educators need to know that those resources are available to them, that Google is a place that that is a wealth of knowledge around how educators can begin to implement using technology into their classrooms. And so we're just at the beginning of what that can look like, and we're going to see the way
Yes.
that it continues to change. But let people know how they can find you, how they can find your work, the different ways that they can connect with Google if they're not in the Southeast. Just give people a rundown of that.
Oh, yeah. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ask a Techno Girl. So it's AskATechno Girl. So you can find me anywhere on there.
And
Awesome.
just, one thing that just popped into my head, perhaps it's worth us, getting an understanding of who your counterparts are in the various different other areas, and we can share those as
Yeah.
resources when we put the podcast out, so that people know who to contact in the Northeast or in California or the Midwest. So that would definitely be awesome to find out as well.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely send it to you as well. So when you put it out, to be able to have those, because I have teammates that have in the different areas, and so also just a great space is Google for Education on Twitter.
Hmm.
I'm just a fan of it, and I know I work for Google for Education, but Google for Education on Twitter is a great resource they respond. It's not like anyone; it's a human that responds on there, and so it's definitely a great place to connect to. But I can definitely send you kind of the contact, and they can reach out to me as well. And I can put them in the point of contact to who they need to speak with.
Awesome.
Awesome, awesome,
So,
awesome.
all the educators or parents out there that are working with a young person that might not at all be interested in STEM, but maybe isn't interested in anything else, maybe this is the thing that they'll get interested in. So, give them access
Yeah,
to that by reaching out to Kimberly and making sure that you're using the resources available to you, to just, again, allow for our students to have this as an option. We're not saying every single child needs to want to work in STEM or computer science, but we're
absolutely.
saying that every single child that wants to uh, should have the information. And if they don't want to, because they don't know what it is, that they know what it is and they have the opportunities to help them get started in the space. So thank you so much for sharing your area of expertise. And so last but certainly not least, it's time for you to become the interviewer. You get to ask us a question about this topic as our final question on the podcast.
Yay, I get to be the interviewer. Okay.
Yay.
So my question is like, what is your hope for STEM in the classroom for within the next 5 years? What is your hope? What do you hope to see?
Great question.
So, I mean, I'll start, because I think, I just tend towards technology in a way that Eva doesn't as much. Like, I fancy myself a budding futurist, where I'm paying attention to what's on its way. And once again, fascinated, terrified. So I want students to be the creators of these tools, to learn what they need to learn so that they can become the creators of these tools, particularly students in our communities. What we already know is that we run culture. Like it's when we do a thing, it all of a sudden it blows up all across the country and all across the world, but we rarely get to take advantage of it. So when our students become the creators of these things and they create the organizations around it, now we can take advantage of that of our cultural the word's not coming to me, but of our cultural contributions,
Yeah.
and we can help to really raise our own communities. And the last thing I'll say about that is that the fact is that young people have these malleable minds. Like they don't know what they don't know. They don't have all of these things that oh, you can't, that's not going to work. It doesn't work that way. Like it's not the same for them. Like they if you get them early enough and you inspire possibilities in them, sky is the limit. And so they're going to think about things that are detached from the way things are, whether that has to do with money and blockchain and cryptocurrency, whether that has to do with the interaction with AI and robotics and how it can be. They are able to unlock outside of that status quo that we talked about in ways that we are not necessarily able to do. So I hope to see them really start to take the lead, and us just provide some of the wisdom and guidance, and letting them run with these things, and utilizing technology to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that for me, I'm thinking of it more on like the educator side of there's information that you don't necessarily know that you need, and I need you to get that information. And so thinking of it from that side of things, where I think that education is 100% to bring out and to allow for students to play and figure out the things that they are passionate about and then do something to create the thing that they're not seeing in society. So I'm with my dad 100% on that. When I'm thinking about the content delivery way that educators can begin to use technology more often in the classroom, I think that we should use or more people should be using a flipped classroom method. So that is, for people who don't know, it is allowing for the lecture style, the consuming of information to happen individually with students on their own. And then when you come into class, you're spending most of that class time actually applying the information or the knowledge that you did outside of the classroom. And so my ultimate goal and what I want a school that I create to look like, or that I create in collaboration with others to look like, is where students aren't coming to find my expertise as an individual, but we find the people in the country that do this the best, and that explain this the best, and that they create curriculums that are already pre-developed, that now if you're a homeschool child, you can opt in to find this. If you're in a school, you can opt in to find this. If you're a teacher and you want to buy this curriculum, you can just buy it for your classroom and use. And then we allow for more of that bringing out, more of that discussion, more of that conversation to actually happen in the school space, so that students have more flexibility in terms of their schedules. They are able to come to school to actually get excited about the projects that they're developing, or the things that they're changing, or the things that they're learning more about in terms of their passions. And those more nitty gritty pieces of I kind of need to know this to live, information being given to them in a way that is tangible and is from the people who are already doing this the best. That is how I believe we can use technology to really drive student learning in a way that we haven't necessarily seen on a large scale in our education system.
And I'll just quickly add to everything of what you just said, because what she's talking about is personalization. It's kind of create kind of choose your own adventure, and it's a teacher being the guide from the side, as opposed to the sage on the stage, where it's here, blah blah blah, blah, you know what I mean? Take this, whether you want it or you don't. It's students saying, oh, I want this, right? I want this piece right here. And then they get the piece that they want. And then when you get into the classroom, that they're working on something, maybe by themselves, but then the teacher can come over and say, oh, hey, wow, you watched that lesson. Here's something related to that. So that personalization is we have that in everything else. You know what I mean? At this point in the world, it is the way you want at Burger King. Yeah, it has to be that in school.
I got chill bumps, because that's amazing. Like, oh my goodness, like if we could see that, like our kids would just be so much of a creators and just amazing. They already are. However, just what amp that creativity and that curiosity up. So definitely.
100%.
Tell Google you heard Black on Black education with a couple ideas. Send us a couple bucks. We can start down the process of making it work for sure.
We definitely could. We definitely could. So we are at the end of another episode of the Black on Black Education podcast. We are so grateful for your insights. I think that people are going to have listened to this episode and left with so many tangible ways that they can use technology in the classroom, and also just a mindset shift around how technology, STEM, STEAM, computer science are all avenues that are available to our students. They're able to do it. They have what it takes. It's just a matter of the opportunities being placed in front of them and them being empowered to believe that they can do it. So thank you so much. I already know all the folks that you work with are exponentially supported. Ooh, we got 2 dogs in this podcast this week.
She was doing so well. She was doing so well.
Better because you are working with them. And so I am grateful. I'm thankful. And that was another episode of the Black on Black Education podcast, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.